Hello and welcome to this tutorial on altitude training. This sort of material covers both some material which is in the AS course for some of the exam boards and A2 for the others. So just be clear on what you're studying and just be clear at what point you're studying. Okay, so what I'm going to do within this session is I'm going to describe the process of altitude training, and I'm going to describe the benefits and really the issues relating to the use of altitude training. And of course, we're doing this in relation to the impact it might have on our VO2 max. We've studied this VO2 max or aerobic capacity for a few lessons now. We're trying to understand it better. And of course, altitude training is an alternative, quite elevated, literally, method of increasing one's VO2 max. So we're going to have a look at that. The first point I want to make for you is that generally speaking, altitude training will happen at something above 2,000 meters. Okay, so 2,000 meters is the standard kind of minimum height requirement. And by the way, 2,000 meters is approximately 8,000 feet. And I put this image in here because Fon Romeo is the it is Team GB's altitude training camp in the Pyrenees, and you notice here that it's right at that point, 1836, at this particular point on this particular road, and there are parts of that area which are above 2,000 meters, which is why it's used for that particular reason. The other point I would make to you, though, is that when we're at altitude, we often use this idea that there is less oxygen, right? That there's less of it, and kind of that's true. But the point I want to make to begin with is that there's in fact the same amount of air, and there's the same amount of oxygen in that air, and the oxygen itself is still at 20.9%. It's 20.9% of the air that's at that altitude. So oxygen still makes up the same proportion of the air. It's just that the air is less dense as a whole. So what we must say then is, but we have the same amount of oxygen, or same proportion of oxygen, but we have to acknowledge that we have air pressure, which is lower. So the air pressure itself is lower at this altitude, which is why it makes sort of endurance aerobic type work harder. And we also have to acknowledge that the partial pressure of O2 at this level is lower. Okay, so the PPO2 is lower. So get that clear first of all. Understand that this is the sort of environment that we're looking to achieve this type of training in. So a couple of other things that I want to address before we get into the benefits is to recognize